Hey guys, I'm Khadroth, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about Shishoufest. There's a lot you guys need to know. This is our next upcoming Lotto on the NA server. Let's go ahead and jump right in. There's a couple of things we got to go over with regards to Shishoufest before we begin. NA is going to have a weird environment that JP never had for this event. The first thing that you guys can obviously see on the screen here is going to be that we're going to have append skills. With regards to this guide, we are trying to go through most of these without assuming that you guys have unlocked append skills. I think that's the only fair thing to do, but there may be some comps where we require it, because it might be that that is the only way to make that unit work, that will be a requirement for that. So just keep that in mind. But the big thing here is always pretty much going to be the mana loading. It is the best one of pretty much all the appends. Again, as you guys can see, just having it unlocked at rank 1 is going to get you guys 10% charge. So in a lot of those cases, if we have to unlock it, we hopefully don't have to require you to max it, and you guys might be able to get away with 10%. We'll talk about that where that's applicable. There may be some comps that require, say, a super scope, or maybe we just actually need the maxed ranked append. And for that, again, I'll try to make it clear that, hey, you might be able to get away by just instead using a normal K scope and maxing out the mana loading, or again, you might have to go ahead and max out the mana loading just to even get it to work with, say, Double Castoria. Again, Castoria's presence here is going to be a huge factor in this Lotto, but obviously we're going to also try to make it so that some comps can work without her. It's just for pretty much the 90 plus comps, guys, you guys can expect that that is going to be the case for a lot of them, that it's going to be a lot of Castoria comps. So just keep that in mind. That is my fair warning to you guys. Again, hopefully we get this guide to you guys before Castoria's banner comes out, because again, we're trying to work as hard as we can to produce all of this. Now, the second thing that you guys need to understand is that there is damage bonus in the event. This is due to the rarity. So as you guys can see, all 5 stars get 20% damage bonus. All 4 stars get 30%. All 3 stars get 40%. 2 stars 45%, and 1 stars 50%. So the damage bonus is just dependent on the rarity. Everyone gets it. As a result, this is all built in and everybody's capable of doing some extra damage. It just sort of depends, because it's going to help you in some cases, in other cases it won't. I know a lot of people will sit there and be like, oh man, you know, certainly Chin Gong and stuff like that's going to help me because he's a 2-star, and you'd be somewhat right, but there's also another factor here that's going to be a big thorn in people like Chin Gong or Arash's side. That's going to be our Lotto CE. It is, honest to God, probably our worst Lotto CE that we have ever had in the history of FGO. There may be some others that I'm not thinking of, but it's the worst one I can think of in recent memory. Typically for fest events, we don't get guts on a CE unless it's like the damage bonus CE. Instead, this is the actual Lotto currency CE that we're getting it on. And this is a huge problem because it means you're constantly wanting to take as many of these as possible. So it means if you're trying to use a comp with Chin Gong or Arash, throwing a CE like this on the unit they're either trying to kill or themselves, they're trying to kill themselves, represents a huge problem. You can't actually just kill them outright because they have a guts on them. On top of that, it has no starting charge. It has no star bomb. So again, there's really no advantage to using this other than, yeah, it's just the buster up. It's also split stats as well, so you don't even get that big of an advantage from leveling it. It may help you some, but yeah, like I said, this is just probably all around the most useless and sort of antagonistic craft essence we've ever gotten in a Lotto. So that's going to be one of the big problems with this one. In fact, round 1 is a particularly bad round. That's what we're going to be focusing on in this video. And I'm going to be talking to you guys sort of about the strategy for how to approach that. So at that point, let's go ahead and talk. So I've already mentioned the damage bonus in the event. I've already mentioned the kind of cruddy craft essence and how it works. I mentioned that Castoria will probably be important for efficiency purposes. I mentioned the appends and why they're going to be super important and a game changer for NA, because they're going to enable comps that maybe weren't doable before on the JP side of things. But the thing I haven't talked about, and the thing that I'm going to get asked a lot and will be continued to ask until the event comes out, is 90 versus 90 plus. And I think I can do the best thing that I can here by just sort of laying out all the facts for you guys. I can't tell you exactly what to do, because what to do is going to change depending on your priorities and your account. Each one of those things is going to make it so that you have to make your own decision for you. So basically, the way to understand is that 90 versus 90 plus, they're the same node. The 90 node is easier to do. The 90 plus node, though, is going to have a little bit more trickeration involved. You're going to have to do some wacky comps to make things work. They're gonna way more incorporate critting or a single target Noble Phantasm user back into the farming scene compared to just your standard sort of 3-3x layout 90 node. Okay, that means the 90 plus nodes are going to be harder to do. Not everyone's going to be able to do them. So what's the advantage to a 90 plus node? 90 plus node is going to get you the exact same lotto currency that a 90 node will. Well, that doesn't sound that different. Why don't I just do the 90 node then? Because there's still some advantages. The advantages would be, one, that again, you have a higher CE drop rate in the 90 plus node. So if you're trying to farm as much as possible, if you're trying to get as many CE drops as possible to help your lotto efficiency, 90 plus is going to be how you do that, kind of. Again, the difference isn't huge, but it is something. It could in the long run, especially over hundreds of runs, actually make a difference for you and make the 90 plus better. On top of that, you've also got the consideration that you get all of the shop currencies while doing the 90 plus. You get none of them while doing the 90. So again, at some point, you're going to want to do the 90 plus just for sheer efficiency. It doesn't have to be round 1. It doesn't have to be round 2. It doesn't have to be round 3. It could just be one of them or all of them. It's up to you to determine when you want to get that done in order to clear the shop. The other consideration there that I don't see a lot of people mention is that because you're getting all the shop currencies, eventually you reach a point where you've cleared the shop, and then all of that currency gets turned back into QP. Now, yeah, it's not a whole lot, but everybody on the NA server right now should be particularly QP sensitive. Why? We just got append skills. Everybody should be hurting for QP. Even if you think you're good, you're probably still not long term. Try to grab as much of it as you possibly can. So that is an advantage, and while it's not a huge advantage because it's still not like a crazy amount of QP, it still is something. It's still something else you get to take from doing that. So if you're trying to sort of stretch the efficiency of your AP, if you've maybe got a limited number of refills, or you maybe just want to get the most bang for your buck out of each refill, that's something where you're going like, hey, okay, that is something I can count on. So again, the C drop rate and the QP there. I've heard a lot of talk about like, okay, well then the 90 plus is better if, you know, maybe you can't do the 90, vice versa. The 90 is better if you can't do the 90 plus, and that could certainly be a consideration where it's like, hey, I don't have the perfect comp and maybe I'm just able to do that. There's also the time consideration. Maybe the 90 node is faster for me to do significantly. Now, I've heard a lot of people say like, oh, well, you know, I'm going to have to use plug suit on the 90 plus and I won't have to use it for the 90. Yeah, that's not always going to be the case. In fact, you still might have to use plug suit on the 90 quite a lot. It's just going to depend on your account. It's going to depend on the units you have. Remember, there's no starting charge on this craft essence, and it doesn't do anything really to help any of your units out. The only thing it helps is Buster, and that's not helping with refund in any way. So it's not the greatest thing for that sort of thing. Keep in mind, your comp might be very similar in speed, depending on which comp you use, to another comp. Plug suit's not that bad in the grand scheme of things. A lot of people try to say it is. Certainly it's not the fastest, right? But if you're not some massive whale or someone that's constantly refilling, you know, hundreds of times, you're very likely to see the effects of this. And often I find that the time aspect of this, and we're going to actually try to talk a little bit more about the timeliness to clear in this guide, but the time aspect is often overstated and mostly a whale concern. For most people, at the end of the day, you're probably like setting your phone down in between runs or something, or you're maybe, you know, like going to the bathroom or something like that, or like maybe you get distracted by something you were watching, trying to sort of break up the monotony, and you're not perfectly efficient. And if that's the case, then sort of the time gain doesn't matter that much because you're wasting it anyways. So you're just going to only go as fast as you yourself as a human can go. And that's where, again, I say it's like the timeliness doesn't end up factoring in that much. I think it's still a good idea to consider all of your options to determine which one's better, because there's one other difference between that. The 90 node may drop one set of ascension materials. So again, let's say like seeds or something like that, right? Versus the 90 plus dropping a different ascension material as you clear it and farm it. And maybe that's like stingers or something like that. And again, I'm just throwing these out here. I'm not actually looking at the node right now in front of me. I'm just saying you may, as someone, be like, hey, I don't really like this node. It's not that easy for me to do. And on top of that, the other node has, you know, an ascension material that I actually want to farm. So as a result of that, just doing the node, getting the drops from the monsters, I'm going to get what I need. perfect, right? Like that would be another consideration that will factor in for some people. Some people will prefer some Ascension mats over the others, especially now with Appends being a thing. You guys should start trying to plan your accounts a little bit better, start looking into the future for what Appends you need, try to prioritize certain key units. That's why we're trying to get you guys this guide as soon as possible so that you guys know which units to focus on. Again, I hope that helped you guys with the 90 versus 90 plus. As for 5 CE versus 6 CE, do 6 CE if you can. If you can't, do 5 CE. It's just a matter of efficiency. The more efficient you can be, the more lotto currency you guys are going to get for each run. So again, it's up to you to determine how efficient you want to be, how much you can stomach in terms of the time spent to clear, or again, maybe the button press is spent to clear. These are things you have to consider for your account and which comp you're going to be running. Just understand the first round is the worst for this. The first round is maybe the strongest argument for doing 90 over 90 plus, whereas other rounds, the 90 plus isn't that bad and most people should be able to do it. The first round is particularly bad and it was infamous on JP. All right, so for our first comp here, we've got actually a double Skadi fragment of 2004 variant of the Achilles comp here. Now, we tried to make him work at NP1, but that just didn't quite work out. He's going to require NP2 mostly due to refund. As you guys can see, he does clear everything in the waves. So that's not necessarily our concern. It is just that Achilles has some issues with regards to his refund. Just talking about the fact that we're using a K-scope here. This is a 5 CE comp. These are going to be sort of these first couple comps here are going to be sort of our pity comps, are very easy to do comps. This is 5 CE on the 90 node. Most people are going to be striving to do 90 plus nodes, or again, potentially 6 CE if they're having to step down to the 90. So with that in regard, we are kind of trying to make this as doable as possible for people that maybe just didn't get lucky, didn't get Castoria, or maybe for some other reason they just can't do some of the other comps. So with that in mind, yeah, we are using a K-scope with a 20% max append. That does mean that, again, we're not calculating a super scope here. This is done to, again, help people out. As a result of this, though, it does require the max append. Thankfully, due to the fact that it's an NP2, it shouldn't be anything too bad. But if you guys are using an NP1, you're going to hear me say this a couple times throughout the video, that essentially at NP1 of an SSR, you're going to need bond 6 in order to even be able to unlock the append, to have enough coins. So at NP2, that shouldn't be a concern, and hopefully you guys have gotten that done. Again, there is another variant of this comp that for a lot of these Fragment of 2004s where you guys can use Plug Suit instead of Fragment of 2004, and then you can mix in, say, a Waver or a Reigns just to make it work out a little bit better for you. So if you guys are worried a little bit about damage, that's sort of what's going to help you. But again, I think this should be fairly straightforward and pretty easy to do. All right, so for our turn order here, in turn 1, you guys are going to go ahead and use both Skadi quick ups on Achilles, and then make sure you use Achilles' first skill as well. He should be fully charged thanks to having the K-scope on him. Go ahead and use his NP now. In wave 2, go ahead and use one of the Skadi charge skills on Achilles. Make sure you use Achilles' third skill as well to help out his NP gain here. And then go ahead and use one of the Skadi defense downs, as well as Fragment of 2004's third skill on Achilles in order to help his NP gain even more. From here, go ahead and fire off the NP. Now, on wave 3 here, you guys are going to use the last remaining Skadi charge skill, the last remaining Skadi defense down as well on the enemies, and go ahead and use the Fragment of 2004's first skill on Achilles in order to get him that extra NP damage. That should allow him to NP now, and you guys should be able to clear the final wave here, making this very fluid and easy comp to do. Okay, next up we have the Dantes version of the double Skadi Fragment of 2004 comp. We're able to get away with only NP1 of this as opposed to Achilles needing NP2 because Dantes is a neutral looper and he's going to handle the mixed nature of the node a little bit better. And this also has to do with the fact that Achilles' refund is a little bit suspect at times, whereas Dantes is just a lot surer, especially with the Fragment of 2004 at play. Again, we are using a K-scope with a 20% append max. So do keep in mind that because of the fact that we're using an NP1 Dantes, that means you're going to have bond 6 in order to be able to unlock the append, let alone max it out. Again, we figured this would be better for you guys in order to not have to calculate the attack power of a super scope, and as well as consider the possibility of you having to have one. This should make it a little bit easier for you guys to do, though it will require you guys to invest a little bit in your appends, so it's up to you if you want to have to run this comp. Do keep in mind there's also going to be a plug suit variant of the comp rather than using Fragment of 2004, in which case you guys can get away with using, say, Waver or Reigns in place of the Mystic code there, but that will add some time to it. It will slow things down. You might even be able to get away with Nero Bride as well, especially with a good 50% charge sheet. Just up to you guys. It's up to you to see what you want to do and which one is the best comp for you. I'm just trying to present you guys with options. The only concern we're going to have in this comp is going to come in wave 3, where Caster is going to live 9% of the time, but it's only going to be 3.3k at most. That should definitely be a lot easier to do. All right, so for your turn order here, we're going to start by going ahead and using both the Skadi quick ups on Dantes, and then go ahead and pop Dantes the skill 2 to help out his refund. From there, go ahead and fire off your NP and you should be solid. And wave 2, go ahead and use the charge skill on Dantes to get him back up to full. Pop Fragment of 2004's third skill in order to get him more refund, and then go ahead and use one of the Skadi defense downs to make sure that he clean clears. Fire off that NP and you should be fine again. Now in wave 3, go ahead and use the last remaining Skadi charge skill and the last remaining Skadi defense down, and then go ahead and pop Fragment of 2004's first skill on Dantes, as well as Dantes' first skill, in order to make him deal as much damage as he can. Caster will live, like I said, about 9% of the time with only about 3.3k HP remaining, but go ahead and fire off that last MP and you should have this node easy. All right, next up is our Lancelot version of the double Skadi Fragment 2004 comp. Again, we're trying to make this quick and easy since this is the 90 node. We're trying to make these comps as sort of fluid as we can. This is going to be using an NP2 version of Zerkerlot. Just keep that in mind, that Lancelot Berserker is going to, struggle a little bit at NP1, especially on refund, but we are going to be helping deal with that, thankfully, due to the Fragment 2004. So again, we are sort of using a normal K-scope with a maxed append. Do keep in mind this means that you don't have to have the maxed out super scope attack power. It means we did calculate this with this in mind, and you guys are going to be able to get away with a little bit less. But do keep in mind that this does mean that you will have to have enough in order to get your append unlocked and maxed out if you want to do this version of the comp. There is a plug suit version, again, with Waver or Reigns if you so choose, possibly even Nero Bride. It's just up to you guys if you want to try and run that, because again, the plug suit will slow you down. The only concern we're going to have in this comp is going to be on wave 2 against the Helper, where again, he's going to clean clear at about 65% of the time, but it can leave up to a maximum of 5.8k remaining, so just be careful with that. Otherwise, we should be good on the rest of this comp. Right, for the turn order here, you guys are going to want to go ahead and start off on wave 1 using both the Skadi quick ups on Lancelot, and then go ahead and use Fragment of 2004's third skill on Lancelot here in order to give him more NP gain. Should help him overcome this first wave, so go ahead and NP and he should refund back to about 60%. Then wave 2, go ahead and use one of the Skadi charge skills on Lancelot, and then go ahead and use Lancelot's third skill, and that should bring him up to full and help his refund out, and fire off that NP one last time, with again only the Helper living about 35% of the time. Now in wave 3, go ahead and use the last remaining Skadi charge skill. Go ahead and use both Skadi defense downs on this turn, and then the Fragment of 2004's first skill on Lancelot to give him that extra NP damage. Fire off that NP one last time and easily handle Caster and the Valkyries. And now we make it to the Marie version of these comps. It is still 5 CE, but you can see it has become plug suit, so you're required to have not only your own Skadi, but also your own Waver at least. There should be multiple other options you guys can run for this, again including but not limited to a 50% CE with a maxed out append and Nero Bride. That should also make it work, but we can get away with only NP1 Marie here, so that is fine. The only requirement that we did calculate in here for Marie was that her first skill was at 9, because again she has the upgrade here that gives her attack up for the party. So again, this will help you out, but a refund is a little bit suspect, and it's why we had to go with the plug suit option for this, so it just is what it is. Again, assuming we're using the K-scope is just to kind of say, hey, we don't require you to have the super scope, but it should still be approachable for most of you guys. The big concern is going to be actually unlocking and maxing out the append to help you guys out. Again, though, if you guys look, there is only one concern in this run here, and that's going to be the Valkyries on the final wave. They'll live about half the time, they'll die about half the time. When they live, they'll only have at most about 9.3k HP. Nothing too bad, nothing to be concerned with, especially with all the stars floating around in a Skadi comp. All right, for the turn orders, you're going to go ahead on wave 1 here and start out by putting both the Skadi quick ups on Marie, and then go ahead and use Marie's first skill in order to get that attack up, and then pop the NP now. You should be able to easily handle the first wave. In wave 2, go ahead and use one of the Skadi charge skills on Marie. You don't need the defense down, so go ahead and swap that Skadi out for Waver in the back line, and then go ahead and pop Waver's second and third skills in order to get Marie to full. From there, go ahead and fire off the NP. Now in wave 3, go ahead and use the last remaining Skadi charge skill and the defense down, and then go ahead and use Waver's first skill on Marie to bring her up to full. Go ahead and use the plug suit attack buff at this point in time, and then NP the final time with Marie, where again, the Valkyrie should live about half the time. Right now we've got our first variant of a 5C comp for Buster. This is pretty much going to be the only one that we're going to do. Again, just because Godjuna works decently well here. We are requiring a NP2 Godjuna. This is just a damage issue, especially in wave 3. There is a, what I would call, better version of this comp. It just depends. And you can also reduce this amount by virtue of using a better CE here. Basically, we said any 50%, so we didn't calculate any amount in this. You could use something like Aerial Drive. You could use something like Heavenly Demon Princess. Both of those should be really good for boosting damage, especially if you have one that's leveled up to say like 100 or something. So again, you could definitely cut down on the variance here in terms of the amount of health remaining. Certainly that is the goal, that you would use a better CE than this, but this is essentially a MLB Dragon's Meridian if you want to think about it that way. Wave 1 is going to be doing Nito Chris in order to handle it, and we are going to be using Waver Skadi. So again, you could use double Waver, you could use Reigns in place of this. It's just primarily the easy setup that we displayed, so just understand that there are other options for this. Again, we do require the maxed out append skill, but thankfully, since it is an NP2 Godjuna, we would assume that you have that done. There is another version of the comp that we'll do after this that uses an NP1 Godjuna, so just pay attention for that. All right, so for the turn order here, on turn 1, you guys are going to go ahead and use Nito Chris's second skill. You can use the first skill if you want, but she should clean clear everything other than the instructor, with at most it living with about 3.4k HP. Go ahead and fire off the NP and you're good. Now in wave 2, go ahead and use Godjuna's first skill, Godjuna's second skill, and he should already be ready to just go ahead and fire off that first NP if you so choose. Now in wave 3, go ahead and swap that Nito Chris out for the other support, probably Skadi in this example. Go ahead and use the Skadi charge and defense down here on Godjuna, and then go ahead and use the Waver skills remaining in order to boost Godjuna up to full charge. From here, go ahead and use the plug suit attack buff and NP the final time. And like I said, if you have a better CE than the ones we were calculating, you should be fine on damage. You just may have to card a little bit on Caster. Right now for the next version of our comp here, it's still going to be using Nito Chris in the front wave, but we're using a K scope instead of a 50% C. The advantage to using this comp is that we get to use Merlin now in this. Since the K scope plus the append will start us out at full charge, we can just go ahead and basically be able to utilize Merlin, the 30% charge skill from Godjuna, and then any other 50% charger. So it does not have to be Waver here. This could be Reigns, this could be Skadi. Again, Reigns would actually add the most damage here, but again, we assume sort of the easiest requirements possible, so we went with Waver since a lot of people should have him from the SSR ticket earlier this year. Again, the only concerns that you guys are going to want to watch out for is the 26k off of Caster at the end. Thankfully, due to the fact that you have Merlin, realistically, Godjuna's cards should be able to mop this up. Just be careful. Again, it is possible that you could 4-turn. Just understand that a higher NP level of Godjuna would shore this up, but we felt decently confident in recommending an NP1 here, provided you were able to do it. All right, so for the turn order here, you guys are going to go ahead and start out by using Nito Chris's second skill. You can use the first again if you want. She doesn't necessarily require it. And then go ahead and fire off the Nito Chris NP, with only the instructor living a couple times here. Maybe gets death procced, it just depends. On wave 2, go ahead and use Godjuna's first skill, and then go ahead and use the Merlin third skill on Godjuna and fire off the NP. From here, go ahead and use Merlin's first skill, and then go ahead and use Godjuna's second skill to get him that charge to 50%, and then go ahead and plug suit in the other support. Bringing in that other support should allow you to get another 50% charge, or go ahead and use all their relevant skills on Godjuna, be it defense downs in Skadi's case or attack ups in Waver's case. Then go ahead and use the plug suit attack up in order to get him the maximum possible damage output that he can and fire off that last MP from full charge. Like I said, just be careful of Caster. He'll live a majority of the time, at most about 26k HP. It's just going to depend on your card luck here as to how efficient you can be in handling him. All right, now we have made it to our first arts comps of the video. So again, this is going to be our first arts comps of the 90 node, and this is exactly what we're talking about when we were saying, hey, look, Castoria, it should be no secret that she's coming out now, get her. Because she represents a jump up in efficiency. If you guys look at this, it's pretty clear to see our first 6 CE comps for the 90 node happened once we got to arts, and Castoria is why. A lot of this has to do with her group charge, a lot of this has to do with the insane refund that she provides her card type. It's just really good, especially on certain key units. So our first comp here is again going to be 6 CE Double Castoria DVR with the OG Chaldea Mystic code. We did assume rank 10 because frankly you guys should have this at rank 10 by now. If you don't, well, there's other Mystic codes you can use. In fact, this comp will also work if you have an Arctic Mystic code at rank 6. So just keep that in mind. You should achieve a little bit similar results, maybe about 12k here on the Valkyries remaining rather than 11k, but still it should be relatively the same. We're also able to get away with only NP1 DVR as a result of this. This is Da Vinci Rider again for anyone that's unfamiliar, and we do require a rank 10 first and third skill, with the second skill here not really mattering. Again, this is going to be a very fluid, easy comp. You just have to be careful with the Valkyries in the final wave, but that should be easily cardable. Just maybe don't pick the worst cards that you can. All right, now for the turn order. You guys are going to really like this. On turn 1, go ahead and use all Castoria skills on DVR. Yep, every single one from both Castorias, all 3 of them from each. At that point, DVR should be at full charge. Go ahead and pop DVR's first skill, that's her charge per turn skill, and then fire off that NP for the first time and you should be good. And wave 2, you don't have to do anything, she's fully charged. Go ahead and fire the NP one more time and should easily handle everything in this wave. Now on turn 3 here, go ahead and finally use DVR's third skill. That's going to get her the NP damage that she needs, and then go ahead and use your Mystic Code's attack buff on DVR, whichever one you're using. Again, be careful of the Valkyries living with about 11 to 12k HP depending on the setup that you're running, and you should be able to handle this with cards if that happens, but otherwise this should be a nice, fluid, easy 6 CE comp for you guys. All right, next up here is going to be our Double Castoria Fragment of 2004 Modred, aka Rider Mordred, Surf Dread, however you want to call her. This is a very fluid, very easy comp. The problem here is we're requiring an NP3, and if you guys can see, the health values are spicy. The real problem here is the Valkyries being a Lancer, Mordred being a Rider. She's not really known for her NP damage to begin with, and this just sort of has her getting thrown for a loop. So we do require an NP3, but NP4 might be advisable at times. Certainly if you're to level up the drop C, it might help a little bit, but again, I'm not necessarily going to advise that because again, this drop C is not that great, nor would it be great for Mordred herself. We are requiring a rank 10 Fragment of 2004, so be careful with that. It is going to be something that we think the damage is sort of stretched here as high as we can really recommend, but we knew some people would ask about this, so this is sort of the minimum threshold for what we think would work for Rider Mordred for this node. All right, for the turn order here on Rider Mordred, this is going to be more par for the course. Just go ahead and pop all the Castoria skills on Surfmo that bring her up to 100% charge. Use all the arts ups on her. Use Rider Mordred's first skill at this point, and you should be good to go ahead and fire off the NP and easily handle all of wave 1. And wave 2, you fully refunded, so just go ahead and fire the NP one more time and she'll easily handle the wave with nothing of concern. In wave 3 now, the only thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to pop the Fragment of 2004's first skill here on Mordred, and you should be good to go ahead and NP with you again, potentially leaving both enemies alive. That's going to be the big concern there, but make sure that you stagger your cards just in case, or again, try to see what you can do to stretch the comp in terms of damage. Right now we've got an Odysseus version of this comp, so again we're going through sort of all the riders here, and you guys can see it is Double Castoria Fragment of 2004 again with a rank 10 fragment. The big hurdle here is going to be that it does sort of require NP2 Odysseus to work well. It becomes both a refund issue for him not refunding to full, as well as a damage issue on Kucaster and the Valkyries if you try to step this down to NP1. So I do not advise it in Odysseus's case. We are going to require the first 2 skills at least to be maxed, and that's really all that you guys need for him in that regard. Right now for the turn orders here on Odysseus, on wave 1 you guys are going to go ahead and pop all Castoria skills on Odysseus and bring him up to full charge. From here, go ahead and use Odysseus's skill 1. Remember, it's targetable, but we don't care who. And from here you should be good to go ahead and fire off your first MP. On wave 2, make sure you go ahead and use Odysseus's second skill, that's his charge skill. Go ahead and use the Fragment of 2004's third skill on him right now in order to get him enough refund to full refund for this wave. Fire off the NP and he should be good. Now on wave 3, go ahead and use the Fragment of 2004's first skill on Odysseus, and again you should be good to go ahead and NP. Just be careful, again, if you're trying to stretch this somehow, things are going to live with a little bit too much health, but at NP2 you should clean clear. Alright, next up we get our Musashi Berserker variant of the comp. Again, we are able to make do with only NP1. That is good news to everybody that rolled her. She's very nice, very fluid. You guys can see the refund amounts here are good. We did use Fragment of 2004 here, but a little bit of a note. If you don't use Fragment of 2004, I believe there is a point at which you will refund 98%. So you should be okay to substitute Fragment with something that provides both damage and charge. Again, that might be something like Summer 3's Mystic Code, or potentially even the New Year's Mystic Code. Just be careful, you might not get as much power, especially out of that New Year's one. So it may be a case where it's like all of a sudden in the final wave here, you didn't quite have enough damage in order to be able to clean clear. So keep that in mind, especially if you guys are trying to level a Mystic Code here, but otherwise this should have a decent chunk of options. Just make sure that you get something again that has both damage and either refund or charge. So for our turn order here, you guys are going to start out by using all the Castoria skills on Musashi Summer here, and then go ahead and use Musashi Summer's skill 2. Fire off the NP when ready, and you should easily handle the first wave and refund back to 100% for the next wave. Now on turn 2 here, go ahead and use the Fragment of 2004's third skill to help out the refund here, and then go ahead and fire off yet another NP. You should easily handle the wave again. Now on wave 3, go ahead and activate Musashi Berserker's third skill, and then go ahead and use Fragment of 2004's first skill on her, and you should be good again to fire off the last NP and easily handle Kucaster and the Valkyries. Alright, now for our final 90 node comp here, this is going to be Double Castoria Fragment 2004 Space Ishtar. Now, unfortunately, it does sort of require an NP2, but keep in mind here, guys, we calculate this assuming that she doesn't get the Arts Up proc from her third skill, so that is why there's a little bit of health remaining there. If you do get the proc, which should happen again 80% of the time, you should be fine for that. I don't know if you'll be able to stretch it down to NP1 though. That'll probably leave a little bit too much health remaining. You may want to start looking at some sort of other alternative. We did require all 10 on the skills, but I'm sure most of you guys, especially that waifu her, probably already have them maxed to begin with. We are also using a rank 10 Fragment of 2004, so keep that in mind, but otherwise this should make it for a very easy, highly damaging comp. Alright, for our turn order here, you guys are going to start out on wave 1, again using all the Castoria skills on Space Ishtar, and then go ahead and use Space Ishtar's first skill, that's her attack up for the party. From here, go ahead and use the Fragment of 2004's third skill, that's going to give her the NP gen that she needs, and then fire off your first NP. Now in wave 2, she should have easily refunded to 100%. Go ahead and just fire the NP one more time and she'll easily handle this wave as well. In wave 3, go ahead and use Space Ishtar's second and third skills here. Again, remember we are assuming no proc from the third skill. And then go ahead and use Fragment of 2004's first skill on Space Ishtar in order to have her have enough damage here. Fire the NP one last time and just be careful of Kucaster living about 26% of the time, that most around 9,000 HP remaining. Alright, now for our first comp of the 90 plus node. If you guys will actually remember here, we basically start out with 2 riders in the first wave, a big health rider boar in the second wave, and then 2 lancers that are high health in the final wave. The result of this is that it's going to force us to use basically weird combinations of units that frankly right now on NA don't necessarily have the best of solutions. This round is considered to be the worst of the 90 plus nodes that we've pretty much yet to experience for a Lotto, and at this point in time, NA, honest to God, would probably not be able to handle it very well without the Appends system coming early. It's not that there weren't comps for this, it's that pretty much everything was very restrictive to a couple select units. So actually getting the Append system early on the NA server ended up being quite the boon because it definitely helped us out. So as you guys can see here, the first comp we're actually going to run for this is going to be a 5 CE comp. We're going to be using MLB Demon Princess, aka Suzuka Thighs, Heavenly Demon Princess. And you guys should have gotten that welfare from the Summer 4 event. This is going to be on an NP2 Artoria. Then we're going to use Kama on the middle wave and then Artoria again on the final wave. And that's why she needs to have the starting charge in order to work for this. This isn't going to be a 6 CE version, but it will be a 5 CE one. And the reason that 5 CE is going to be important here is there may be times where maybe you say, hey, I can do both nodes. Maybe I like the speed or the QP efficiency of the lesser node, but maybe there's times where, you know, I don't know, I end up at 5 CE due to ML being one of the Lotto CEs, and then you go, okay, well now I think it's time for me to actually go back and do the higher node because it has the higher CE drop chance by a little bit, and maybe I can use that in order to actually end up getting, you know, that higher chance and that faster second drop that we need to fill in. So it's up to you to determine whether or not you want to do that sort of strategy, but we figured it'd be good to include a 5 CE comp just in case, or again in case this is just sort of the best thing that someone can do. So again, it is just an NP1 comma versus the NP2 Artoria. We're going to be using Plug Suit and Castoria with waiver. This means that if you have your own waiver, you can take a Castoria on support. So again, I hope a lot of you guys managed to pick waiver if you didn't have him from your SSR ticket. But again, this should make the comp pretty malleable. Problem that we have here is in using Castoria, no one in this comp is Arts, so basically we're only using her because of that really good 30% party charge. The other thing you'll want to watch out for here is again going to be the health remaining on Ku in the final wave. In wave 1 we have a goblin there with about 8.9k. It's not going to be that bad. Most of you guys should be able to card that out, especially with Kama cards being in there. Just be careful of selecting Castoria cards to begin with. If you have a higher health or NP level Artoria, you should be fine. But then again, like we said, Ku here is going to be your main issue in the final wave. Thankfully, Artoria should already have her Dragon Core upgrade. This makes all of her cards, whenever she activates her Mana Burst, turn to Buster cards. That means basically any one singular Artoria card should be able to solve the Ku problem there. But again, it's just going to be up to you and trying to determine what cards to use there. Maybe if you're working at the bare minimums of this comp, try to come up with a strategy for picking out the cards you need very quickly and easily. If you're using higher MP levels of Artoria, again, this won't be an issue though. Alright, so for the turn order here, I want you guys to start out with Waiver on the front line and Castoria on the back line. On turn 1, you're going to go ahead and start out by using both of Waiver skills on Artoria. From there, go ahead and use Artoria's first skill, that should be her Charisma, and fire off the NP the first time for her. Now on turn 2 here, go ahead and swap Waiver out for Castoria with the Plug Suit, and then go ahead and use Castoria's first and second skill on Saber, and then go ahead and pop Kama's second and third skill. You don't need her first skill. And then go ahead and fire off Kama's NP to handle the boar on this wave. Now on turn 3, go ahead and utilize Saber's second and third skills here Go ahead and pop your plug suit attack buff as well at this time, and then fire off the last Artoria NP. Just be careful, Ku might live with little extra health there. Again, like I said, try to select Artoria cards if you can, they'll really help you out. Okay, next up guys, we're going to have a comp that we're going to be doing here before some of the more stable comps. This one's going to be a crit comp, and it is going to be 6 CE, so just disregard the Heavenly Demon Princess. That's just an error with the graphic. But again, the issue here is going to be the fact that due to the fact that it's a crit comp, yeah, it's not going to be super stable. You may occasionally 4-turn or something like that. So this is here as an option if you maybe don't have all the tools necessary to loop, but you maybe have some of these other pieces. This is actually very similar to a comp that I used at the Requiem event, because again, it's sort of the prototype that you might see somewhat into the future, because if you want to get the most out of your AP, trying to do 6 CE is definitely going to help you. Obviously, it might not be the fastest, it might not be the most stable, you might not always 3-turn, but it would still, you know, be able to secure you a sort of 6 CE setup regardless of the amount of turns it would take you. So that's kind of why we wanted to propose this one. Obviously, again, this isn't going to be for everyone, but this one's actually quite nice in how it works, because it's going to be utilizing Summer BB, Arjuna Alter, and then Waver and Merlin. So if you guys have Waver, say, off the ticket, maybe you have a Summer BB and Arjuna Alter of your own, you can take up Merlin. Maybe if you had Merlin on your own from Summer 4 here, you maybe take that Summer BB if you can get a friend to put it up, or an Arjuna Alter, that sort of thing. And again, we don't require a whole lot here. We do require NP1. And yeah, in the final wave, that seems like a spicy amount of health left, and it is. But with the way this comp works, you should actually be good, and I'll explain that as we go through. So the premise of this comp is, yes, we are going to be using BB's card lock memes. So if you guys do understand that, if you've ever used her before, you understand that the drawback of Summer BB is always that, you know, once you get the cards, you're good, but you have to get the cards for it to work. So essentially what we're going to be looking for here is one Arjuna Alter Buster card at least. If you can get that and we can secure the crit from that, we should be good. And that might be the question in a lot of you guys' minds is, well, wait, Cad, you know, this CE, this setup, it's not that good for critting, right? Like, we don't have stars on the CE. There's no star bomb. There's no stars per turn or anything like that. And that's where Summer BB is logically going to come into play here. Having rank 10 of her 3rd skill will really help out. You know, you don't necessarily have to, but anything that you go down on the skill levels is just going to detract from the amount of stars. And let me tell you guys, you're going to want Arjuna Alter to have as many stars as possible to soak to that Buster card. Again, with Summer BB in the party, she gets a passive that gives her 2 stars per turn. With the 3rd skill activated, she'll get 10, so you should get at least 12 from that right there. And on turn 1, if you see the cards that you like and you have a quick card, you can still end up using that quick card, say before Summer BB's NP, that takes out the first wave, and you can use that to get you a couple more stars for the 2nd turn, which is where we're going to need to crit. That is why it says critical hits go burr and Yorokobe shonen, because this one's going to be up to you to sort of make sure that you can make it work. Again, we're not going to plot out the carding here for you guys, but this should work pretty smoothly if you obey the parameters. And I'm going to lay that out for you guys in the turn order and party structure here. I should also note, by the way, we are requiring a 10% append on Summer BB, so you are going to have to get her to bond 6 in order to unlock that at NP1. The reason is just we need it for the charge for turn 1, so that is going to be a deal there. But also, guys, do understand, Merlin has a 2nd skill here that gives invuln to the party, but a little known aspect to it is also that it increases the star generation. So use this when you think appropriately, possibly on turn 1 if you're going to pre-card with the quick card there to get a couple extra stars, again, because this can help out. So I'm not going to include it in the turn order, just understand that this will be a thing. If you need it, you need it. If you don't, you don't. All right, so for your party structure, you want to start out with a front line of Summer BB, Arjuna Alter, Waver, and then on the back line, Merlin. Now, what you guys are going to do here is you guys are going to fish to see if you have a Buster card from Arjuna Alter on turn 1. It's got that triple Buster deck, so it should work out for you a lot. If you don't have it, delay a turn. Just card down maybe the high health enemy, the goblin there on wave 1, and you know, just kind of bide your time, because you're going to wait to have that perfect card set up, and that's why this can 4-turn. Once you do, once you get a Buster card from here, thanks to BB having her append unlocked, you guys should be able to go ahead and pop all of Waver skills on Arjuna Alter. That'll give BB 20% charge herself right there from the overflow. go ahead and plug suit out that waiver for Merlin. And from there, go ahead and use Merlin's first skill and pop that one so that, again, Arjuna Alter gets more charge and so does Summer BB. From here, go ahead and pop Summer BB's second skill to get her up to full charge. And now you want to pop the third skill from Summer BB. That will be the stars per turn and the card lock now that you've already plug suited so that it doesn't break. Okay, from here, go ahead and NP with Summer BB. Again, you can pre-card with a quick card if you want to try and get a couple more stars for the next turn to help you out, and you should be good. Now here in wave 2, you've got the Arjuna Alter Buster card, so I want you guys to pop Arjuna Alter's first and then second skills. That's going to get him the attack up and the soaking and charge for that. Now you use Merlin's skill 3 on Arjuna Alter. Do not NP with him here, just crit. Try to crit with the Buster card and you should be good to go. Now here in wave 3, again, Arjuna Alter handled that first wave. You should be good to just go ahead and pop your plug suit attack buff here and NP. Should be fine here. You should handle the wave pretty easily, but Ku will probably live every time if you're just using an MP1 Arjuna Alter. Again though, you should have that Buster card again, so it should help bail you out if you guys get the crit. Don't be afraid to 4-turn to 5-turn this node. It will happen to you some, but again, if you're trying to get the most out of your AP, this should actually be somewhat consistent and relatively low in turns. Okay, for this comp, we're going to have a 5 CE MLB Heavenly Demon Princess. That's the Welfare CE from Summer 4 with Plug Suit. And we're going to be using Chin Gong, Arash, Double Castoria, and DVR as our third support here. Again, this one's a little bit weird. This is a variant of one of the comps that we saw coming off the JP server. And again, this is going to be a little bit different for NA because of Appends. So we actually don't require any mana loading Appends in this comp. Instead, we actually require both Chin Gong and Arash's third Append to be unlocked and leveled up to 9. The reason for this is because if you guys remember the node structure here, our first two enemies in the first wave are Rider. Our enemy in the second wave here, the Protein Boar, is also a Rider. And our enemies in the final wave are Lancer. So Chin Gong's third append is actually anti-Lancer, and that's going to help him out on the final wave. And then Arash's third append is actually anti-Rider, and that's going to help him overtake the Protein Boar. So we included this because we figured since they were 3-star and lower permanent units, everybody should be able to get enough coins together over time here with enough time before Shishoufest to try and unlock it and level it up. Again, that's just going to be a problem for some people, I'm sure, but this is a thing that can be done, and we don't require grails for this. Now, I should state that there is a 6 CE version of this comp without MLB Demon Princess, but it requires grailing, and the reason I'm not showing it to you guys is because I'm a firm believer that you guys should never have to grail a unit just to get through one node. Okay, if this is the case, you guys should instead consider going and doing the 90 version of the node, not the 90 plus. Do something that's easier, simpler on your account. Grail for love, grail for gameplay if you love gameplay, but don't necessarily grail just to get through this one node. It's not worth it. If you already have the units grailed, maybe you use them profusely, maybe you really like them, that's fine. But so again, it does exist. You can back out MLB Heavenly Demon Princess at that point, but just understand that yes, it's going to require grails, and it's not going to be pretty. You're still going to probably leave a lot of health, but again, that third append is really useful for the NA server here. So the other reason here too is we're going with DVR because DVR actually works for this as a third support. She's actually really good for Chin Gong, since she not only is going to give him MP damage, but she's also going to give him overcharge, and Chin Gong's damage on his overcharge, just like Arash, is actually really good. So that's going to work out quite well for him. Again, there is another version of this comp that instead of DVR, you could use Sakamoto Ryoma, and that would also kind of work. It would boost Chin Gong's damage with the arts up and the attack up for the group, but it would not be the greatest in terms of damage. He would leave quite a significant amount more on Ku there rather than just the 5k that you guys see. So again, that's up to you if you guys want to run this, because it would use Sakamoto, who is a welfare from last year, but I would recommend instead probably going with DVR for this. All right, for the party structure here, because if you guys remember on a Chin Gong comp, this does actually matter. You're going to want to go ahead and go with Arash in your first slot, Gong in your second slot, Castoria in your third slot, and then on the back line, go with DVR in the fourth slot and the second Castoria in the fifth slot. For the turn order here, go ahead and start off turn 1 by using all of the Castoria's skills that are in the party on Gong. From there, go ahead and plug suit out for that Castoria in the fifth slot and use her arts up as well on Gong, and then fire off Gong's NP. You should easily handle the wave, but there might be the trainer goblin living every single time with at most 10k HP that you might have to card out. Now in turn 2 here, let's go ahead and use Arash's skill 3 to charge him. Go ahead and use Gong's skill 2 to charge him even more. Then go ahead and use Gong's skill 3 on Arash, and then go ahead and use Castoria's skill 1 and 2 on Gong. From there, go ahead and use Arash's NP, and he should handle the protein boar most of the time, with at most him living with 3.4k HP due to that rank 9 third append. Now in turn 3, go ahead and use your plug suit attack buff. Use DVR's skill 3 since she just came into the party from Arash killing himself, and then go ahead and use Gong's NP here to fire off one last time, and he should handle Ku thanks to his third append, with him only living 11% of the time with at most 5k HP. Okay guys, this is going to be our Space Ishtar variant here with Ozy. The reason that we're using Ozy here is because the big problem with Space Ishtar and using her in a lot of these comps is we have to calculate things typically assuming that the proc on her third skill that gives arts up fails. Why? Because 1 in every 5 runs that can happen to you. So we always side with that to make the comps as good as possible, just to show that off. But Ozy is nice here because thanks to him and being usable against the protein boar here, we are actually able to get away with assuming success. So that allows you to only have to use an NP3 Space Ishtar here and still only have about 20k HP remaining. You might be thinking only NP3, and yeah, I agree with you. That's my biggest problem here, and it's something I gotta say is that, again, I don't really recommend using Space Ishtar to handle the final wave because she's not really particularly well suited for it. Space Ishtar works better when we can triple NP with her, and Space Ishtar certainly can handle the first 2 waves on her own and then have somebody else handle wave 3. Again, you're going to see that with some of the later comps there where we mix in an Artoria or a Salter or something like that. So again, those comps work perfectly fine because you're actually getting someone that's effective for the final wave that deals a ton of damage, whereas Space Ishtar's neutral. So the barrier to entry for Space Ishtar comps is going to be pretty high for this round just because of this. If you drop this down to not including Ozy and using someone like, say, Kama, it's definitely possible you can actually use Kama's overcharge skill on Space Ishtar for wave 3 here to get more damage, because she's going to get that NP damage overcharge. But the problem with that is you still can get failure, and the failure can still affect refund, or it can affect damage output. In this case, we don't care too much about the refund because we're not going to activate the first skill that quickly. But yeah, that could be a problem in a lot of those other variants without Ozy. So, like I said, if you don't take someone like Ozy, if you can't secure this number, this NP3 goes way up. You're losing 20% arts as far as buffs go. That is significant, and that's going to increase the amount that you're going to need. Certainly if you have a like NP2 here, maybe Grailed and Gold Foed, it can equate to this NP3. But like I said, this is going to be a huge problem for a lot of people, so understand that is one of the big issues. We're also only requiring rank 9 skills on Ozy's first 2 skills here, as well as an NP2 of him. That is going to be a little bit harsh for people, I understand, but that's sort of what we're going to have. Maybe if you have an NP1 Grailed Gold Foed, you might be able to handle the protein board, but otherwise if you drop it to NP1, he's definitely going to have a little bit too much to card. And the other problem that you have, remember guys, you have a caster in the team going up against riders here trying to card that. You could definitely get screwed and end up outside the loop and end up dropping your buffs off, and so that's not going to be a good thing, so we don't want to have that happen. But the good news here is, again, we have restructured this so that you guys don't need to use append skills here. Our original version of this comp, we did have that, but we managed to make it work without it, because again, the issue isn't so much the refund as it is the damage coming off of Space Ishtar. So again, how this one's going to work is Ozy's going to allow her to secure the proc from the third skill. We're going to keep her as hearts. We're going to have our own Castoria with a support one. We're going to be using rank 10 plug suit, and it will be 6 CE. But yeah, these are definitely really high barriers to entry in terms of our NP levels. So just understand, it's not the best comp. There are other solutions that I think are a little bit easier and safer for you guys. All right, for our party structure here, I want you guys to start out with Ozy in the front line, then Space Ishtar, then Castoria, and then do the other Castoria immediately in the back line. Right now for our turn order on turn 1, I want you guys to start out by activating Castoria's first and third skills, put the third one on Space Ishtar. Use her second skill now on Ozy, and then go ahead and plug suit her out for the other Castoria. Now that she's in the party, go ahead and use her arts up on Space Ishtar. But now I want you guys to go ahead and activate Ozy's third skill and then the rest of his skills. That should get you putting everybody having charge on them and also the buff success chance. From here, go ahead and activate Space Ishtar's first and third skills, and you should be good to fire off her NP. Now in wave 2, Space Ishtar should have refunded to about 50%. Let's go ahead and activate Castoria's attack up for the party. That should get Ozy to full charge. Go ahead and put Castoria's targeted 20% charge on Space Ishtar. That should bring her back up to full. And then go ahead and fire off Ozy's NP here. Now in wave 3, you guys are going to need to activate Space Ishtar's second skill and the plug suit attack buff. But you should be good after that to go ahead and NP. Just watch out for Ku living about half the time with 19k at NP3. Right now for our next comp here, this one is going to be a relatively easy 6 CE comp. It is still going to be using plug suit, but we're just going to basically be doing double Castoria with Kiara and Artoria here in order to finish it up. Now, yeah, we do require an append here, unlocked at least for Artoria. This is what I meant when I said earlier at the beginning of the video that the appends actually made a lot more of these comps possible, because certain units like Artoria just happen to be like 10% shy. So this is going to be using an NP2 Artoria, so getting your append unlocked for her should not be an issue for you guys, just in case you wanted to try this somehow at a lower NP level, which could be a thing due to Dragon Core. As you guys can see, even at NP2 she'll leave about 21k, and we feel comfortable thanks to Dragon Core existing and being a possible upgrade for her as of this Lotto, that again, this should be a fairly easily cardable amount, as any one Artoria card will solve this. Certainly you could try to make it work at NP1. I don't really advise it, but it would be a possibility. And if that's the case, then yeah, you would need to be able to get your append unlocked. So do remember, on an NP1 SSR, it's going to be bond 6 is what you need in order to be able to unlock one append for them. Again, this is the mana loading append. Sorry, I didn't say that earlier. That should be obvious, but just in case someone's unfamiliar with the append system. Again, we are going to be using just an NP1 Kiara. She will have a banner probably before the Lotto due to the, I believe it's the Oku event rerun that should be happening there. So you guys will be able to pick her up if you haven't already had the opportunity to, but hopefully we had the video out before that point, so we'll just have to wait and see. But again, this is just going to work in the sort of double DPS fashion there, where you have both of them on the front line, and then you're rotating the Castorias through with one on the back line and one on the front line. So it's just going to be that similar structure as to how this one works, but otherwise there's not too much here to write home about. The only real concern was actually Kiara's refund, essentially coming off of the first wave there, as again, you guys can see she doesn't have too great because she is an alter ego going up against the riders, but she should work. She does have a 50% charge skill. That's going to make her really, really nice. And again, just so that we're clear here, this is OG Kiara. This is not Moon Cancer Kiara. This is Alter Ego Kiara. All right, so for the turn order here, I want you guys to go ahead and start out by popping all 3 of the Castoria skills on the front line on Kiara. From there, go ahead and plug suit out that Castoria and bring the other one in, and then go ahead and do the exact same thing and use all of them on Kiara again. Now from here, go ahead and activate Kiara's third skill to get her the NP gain that she needs, and go ahead and activate Artoria's first skill to get her that charisma, and then go ahead and fire off Kiara's NP for the first time. Now on turn 2, go ahead and activate Kiara's first and second skill to get her that charge, and then go ahead and NP with Kiara one more time. Now on turn 3, go ahead and utilize Artoria's second and third skill here. That should bring her up to full and activate her mana burst, which has Dragon Core, which is going to turn all of her cards to Buster in case you low roll. Go ahead and fire off the NP, maybe using the plug suit attack buff if you need, and you should be good. Alright, for our next comp here, this is going to be the same as the last one. It's just going to be Kiara with Salter now. So again, pretty much the same rules as the Artoria comp here. We're going to be using just the NP1 Kiara. You got to be a little bit careful about the refund. But again, we don't really care too much about refund here in the second wave because we're headed right into Salter for the last one. The boar here will live with a little bit of health as opposed to the Artoria comp, and this is because Salter's charisma is not as high ranking as Artoria's. It doesn't scale as well. So even though we calculated Salter at rank 10 skills, that's still sort of the best you're going to be able to eke out with an NP1 Kiara. Again, it is a 10-10-10 skill setup, but the real concern here is obviously going to be with Ku in the final wave, because again, you will be having Salter who will be effective, but you're also going to have Kiara as an alter ego against a knight class enemy, and Castoria, same deal here, which at best she'll be neutral. So that is going to be our concerns as we look towards this, is do we have enough card power here to handle Ku? But otherwise, Salter actually has a little bit of an advantage over Artoria here, as she is man-traded versus the sky-traded Ku and Shisho here. And so that's going to be really nice compared to Artoria's Earth trait, which gets countered by it. And that's one of the reasons that, again, even though we are requiring an MP2 Salter here, she still manages to pretty much hold her own. I will say part of the problem here is going to actually be having your own Salter, but the other problem here is going to be having one at with the append all the way maxed there for mana loading at 20%. Because again, she charges a little bit less than Artoria at 20% versus Artoria's 30%. So with Artoria, we only needed the append unlocked. With Salter, we need it maxed out in order to equalize that that necessary charge. But this should work, and again, this should actually be a very nice solution for you guys that maybe didn't get an Artoria but had a strong Salter or something like that. All right, so for your turn order here, start out with a front line of Salter, Kiara, and Castoria with the other Castoria on the back line. Go ahead and on turn 1 start out by using all the Castoria skills on Kiara. From there, go ahead and plug suit out that Castoria and bring in the other one and do the same thing again using all of her skills on Kiara. That should bring Kiara up to full charge now, but let's go ahead and activate her skill 3 as well. From there, activate Salter skill 3, which is the Charisma, and you should be ready to fire off your first NP with her easily handling the front wave. Now on turn 2, go ahead and activate Kiara's first and second skill to get her the charge that she needs to NP again, and fire off the NP one more time with the boar living only 4% of the time with at most under 1,000 health. And turn 3 here, we're going to go ahead and pop Salter's first and second skills here, the mana burst and the charge skill, and then go ahead and use your plug suit attack buff and then fire off the Salter NP one last time. Again, just be careful of Ku living there some of the time with at most about 14k health. Now we're going to get to the Space Ishtar version of the Kiara comp that we ran earlier. This one is going to require NP2 Space Ishtar because she's neutral versus Kiara, who was an alter ego and was semi-effective against the riders. But the nice thing here is too, again, that you have an extra charisma here to help out Artoria. So again, we only require NP2 Artoria, and at worst you're going to be dealing with 21.6k here. That shouldn't be too difficult, again, especially due to the fact that we are going to have the Dragon Core upgrade for Artoria, and we are going to be able to change all of Artoria's cards to Buster. So whenever we activate that skill, any one Artoria card should solve this for you. If not, again, you should probably be well within the cardable range due to all the charisma buffs flying around in this comp. Now, the other concern here is going to be having Artoria's append unlocked. Thankfully, since this does require an NP2, that should be fine. But if you're somehow trying to stretch this at NP1, which I don't recommend, you can do it, but you're going to have to get the append for mana loading there unlocked, at least to the 10% there. And then that's going to require bond 6 on an NP1. Otherwise, again, I think this comp's fairly straightforward. We are requiring rank 10 on the skills. We are requiring double Castoria here. And yeah, it is going to be a plug suit comp, but as you guys can kind of see with these 90 plus rounds, if you want things to be consistent, plug suit's going to be your answer for a lot of this. And that just has to do with the overall scalability and sort of annoyance of this first round especially. Right now, the other thing I wanted to point out here for this comp is that the reason we're using NP2 Space Ishtar is because not damage. Damage is fine in the opening 2 waves. It's actually the refund issue here. And again, NP2 is what's going to secure this. This 47% needs to actually be 50%, but we don't include Space Ishtar's Avenger passive, and we assume the third skill fails in terms of its arts proc. So that's something we always do for safety purposes, because again, it can affect refund there. And so this is assuming both failure and not Space Ishtar's normal passive there from Avenger. So with the passive from Avenger, she should reach 50%. You should be good, even with failure. That's why we recommend NP2 here. We're not going to say you can't get the job done with NP1, but well, you might need to pre-card, and that's frankly going to be hard since Space Ishtar only has 3-hit NP, and trying to get an extra hit of overkill there is not easy. I should also note that a lot of people will ask, hey, if Artoria works in this comp, does Godjuna work? And the answer to this is yes, but it's basically going to be an NP5 that's required. Again, it'd be the same thing. You'd need to unlock the append here, but even at NP5, you're going to have about a 50% chance to kill. But unfortunately, it's going to have pretty much the same settings here with about 20k remaining. So you could try to step it down, but remember, you're going to be beholden to the cards. I don't necessarily recommend that, but it is an option that you guys should be aware of. Okay, now for our turn order here, on turn 1, you guys want to start out with a front line of Artoria, Space Ishtar, and Castoria, with the other Castoria on the back line. Now in turn 1 here, go ahead and start out by using all of Castoria's skills on Space Ishtar. From here, go ahead and plug suit out that Castoria for the other Castoria, and then go ahead and use all of her skills again on Space Ishtar. From there, make sure you activate Artoria's skill 1 for her charisma, and Space Ishtar's skill 1 as well for her charisma. And now you should be ready to go ahead and fire off that NP for Space Ishtar, and you should be good. Now in turn 2, go ahead and activate Space Ishtar's second skill. Make sure you select arts with that, and her third skill, the charge skill, that also can proc her damage buff for arts. Again, go ahead right here and fire off the Space Ishtar NP, and you should be solid. Now in turn 3, go ahead and activate Artoria's second skill, her Mana Burst, aka Dragon Core now, and the third skill for her charge. That should bring her up to full. Go ahead and activate your Mystic Code's attack buff, and then go ahead and fire the last Artoria NP. This should be good, just be worried about Ku living with at most about 21.6k. Again, remember, just try to select Artoria cards and you should be good. Right now for the Salter version of the prior comp here, again, we're still going to be using NP2 Space Ishtar. Again, her Avenger passive is not included here, so that will allow her to reach that even 50% that she needs to activate her charge skill and reach max. And the NP2 is going to be sort of what's necessary to reach the required refund to get to this point on Space Ishtar, so be careful with that. Just to understand, we always assume third skill's failure on the proc for Space Ishtar, so that at least is to your advantage. This is going to be using Double Castoria and Plug Suit yet again. Again, it's all rank 10 skills on everybody. Concern is obviously going to be that Salter has a weaker charisma there than Artoria, but again, she does at least have trait advantage versus trait disadvantage that Artoria had on Ku here. So that is going to be very nice. And while we do require NP2, she actually has less carding damage needed at a min roll here than Artoria did. But unfortunately, she doesn't have something like Dragon Core, so you should be fine still. Just be careful, make sure you play your cards well here. Don't select all quick cards and stuff like that. But again, it should be okay, especially with all of the charismas flying around in this comp. Do understand too that because we're requiring NP2 here, we're also requiring a max level mana loading. That shouldn't be difficult though, thankfully, due to that fact. Just understand that you are going to have to get that unlocked, and you are going to have to get that all the way leveled up if you want to use your Salter for this instead of like an Artoria or a Godjuna. Again, I mentioned Godjuna in the prior comp if anyone's interested in that, so check that one out if you want to hear my thoughts on that. All right, now for the turn order, you're going to want to start out with a front line of Space Ishtar, Salter, Castoria, and then another Castoria on your back line. From here on turn 1, let's go ahead and activate all the Castoria skills on Space Ishtar. That should bring her up to 50% charge. Then go ahead and plug suit out that Castoria for the other one on your back line. From here, go ahead and activate all of that Castoria skills on Space Ishtar again to bring her up to full. Now from here, go ahead and activate Salter's skill 3 for the charisma and Space Ishtar's skill 1 for her charisma, and you should be good now to go ahead and fire off the Space Ishtar NP. Now in wave 2, again, she should be right at 50%, so let's go ahead and activate her second skill. Make sure you choose arts with it, and then go ahead and activate the third skill. Remember, we did calculate this without getting the arts buff from that third skill, but it is what it is. You should be at full, and now you can fire off the second Space Ishtar MP. Now in turn 3, let's go ahead and activate Salter's first skill, her mana burst, and her second skill, her charge skill, to bring her up to full charge. Go ahead and activate your Mystic Code's attack buff, and then fire off Salter's NP here, with again Ku being handled most of the time, but about 33% of the time he'll live, and at most he's going to have about 13.6k HP remaining. Okay guys, that's going to be it for round 1. Finally, you may notice I'm in a different shirt than when I first recorded. That's because it took us so long to get these comps done. Again, round 1 we really struggled to find good stuff for you guys, especially at 6 CE. 5 CE, a lot more is doable, so again, we do think that's possible. But remember guys, if you guys can 5 CE the 90 plus, you might want to consider just 6 CEing the 90. This first round is particularly bad, we know that, and again, hopefully we get Oku after Castoria's banner so that you guys have the chance to roll both on Castoria and have that quartz then freed up for stuff like Kiara or Kama. Both of those are options that I think can help people out, especially with that middle wave there with the rider. That's going to be a huge issue. Again, I know Space Ishtar is a little disappointing for a lot of people here. You understand, if you have a higher level NP level Space Ishtar, it can definitely work, but that is going to be our concern for this, is that that third skill having the failing proc could potentially screw you over sometimes. So it is what it is. We tried to come up with the most consistent comps that we thought were good to advise for you. Do understand you might be able to stretch things, but yeah. Anyways guys, I will see you guys for the next one. We're gonna be getting to round 2 soon, so good luck and happy hunting.